What's up, everyone? D-Crack here, about to react to another video for you guys. This is a new video by the channel Top 15s. It says Top 15 Horrifying Abandoned Places to Explore. Like always, I'll have a link to original video down below. This is a longer video, about 25 minutes, so if you need to grab a drink or a snack or something, pause this video quick and come back. Let's go ahead and check this out, guys.
Number 15, Six Flags Jazzland, New Orleans. The home of jazz, Mardi Gras, and Baron Samedi, New Orleans is known for its vibrant atmosphere, as well as its rich history. This was temporarily halted in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, which slammed into the Gulf Coast in 2005. New Orleans flooded due to the levees breaching, and emergency relief was slow, resulting in an almost archaic nature as the residents fended for themselves. While the city is now back on its feet, there are still monuments depicting the horrific aftermath of Katrina's wrath. Six Flags New Orleans, also known as Jazzland, was left abandoned in the aftermath and remains so today as officials decide whether or not to fix up the park. Those venturing in find something out of a horror movie, with the rides and funhouses now worn down, rusting and broken. The park now resembles Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses, and it would come as no surprise if someone gets the idea to scare explorers dressed as a clown sometime soon. Even the park's slogan forebodes something sinister, with the phrase "It's playtime" sprawled across the entrance and around the park. The proposals to either demolish or rebuild the park are at a standstill, and is now mostly used for urban exploration and the occasional film shoot. One can only hope it doesn't become the setting for a real-life horror story in the future. Number 14, Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia. Prisons are never a desired destination, and with the amount of violence known to happen on the inside, it is no surprise that they tend to be hotbeds for paranormal activity. Eastern State Penitentiary is no exception, and is regarded as one of the most haunted prisons in the United States. Opened in 1829 in Philadelphia, Eastern State has been home to infamous prisoners, including Prohibition gangster Al Capone. According to former guards and fellow prisoners, Capone claimed to be haunted by the men he ordered killed, their mission to give him a taste of hell before his death. However, most experts credit these delusions to Capone's deteriorating mental state as a result of syphilitic dementia. Eastern State closed its doors in 1971, and there were discussions of redevelopment into a shopping mall and even high-class apartments to be surrounded by the prison's walls. Fortunately, the ideas were scrapped after a petition, and instead it was developed into a museum. Visitors have reported strange noises of unexplained origin, disembodied footsteps, and even apparitions of prisoners and guards in uniforms from the 20s through the 40s. Paranormal researchers have flocked to the prison to document evidence, and it even attracted the attention of the famed Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, both of whom managed to capture various audio and visual evidence. The prison is also where the now famous running ghost was captured, with a specter seen running towards a night vision camera before darting back the other way. While now a historical landmark, Eastern State still appears to be home to former residents who couldn't even escape the prison in death. Number 13, Belitz Military Hospital, Germany. Belitz Military Hospital was built in 1898 as Belitz Sanitarium. During the First World War, it was refurbished into a military hospital in order to treat the many injured coming off the front lines. The infamous Adolf Hitler was even a patient here, recovering from a gas attack which left him temporarily blind. It has been speculated it was here Hitler saw visions of a greater Germany rising from the ashes, and where he began his twisted agenda to make such vision a reality. The hospital continued to run through the Second World War and was only abandoned after German reunification in 1990. The entire complex has 60 buildings, and many of them still have lines of beds, medical instruments, and equipment. In fact, the size of the complex relates more to a ghost town than a single-purpose facility. Urban explorers from around the world have flocked to the complex, with its vast area and frozen-in-time feel making it quite popular. Paranormal researchers have also been attracted to the location, as its long history has made it plausible that ghosts are residing in the facility. The derelict location was used to film parts of the Oscar-winning film The Pianist in 2002 and the film Valkyrie in 2008. Today, Belitz Hospital still stands, and it's likely to remain standing, forever frozen in time and for people to explore. Number 12, Centralia, Pennsylvania. A town so eerie and tragic, it inspired the Silent Hill franchise. years. Centralia was once a mining village starting in 1856,
Oh,
hosting four
really?
different
That was
mines.
based off
At its
this
height, it
place?
was home to nearly 2,000 residents, with another 500 to 600 living in the surrounding area. The problems began in 1962 when the town council voted to clean up one of the mines, which had been repurposed as a dump, by lighting it on fire. It was closely supervised by the volunteer fire department, but the flames were seen in the following days, despite the thought it was completely extinguished. Throughout the summer, the fires escalated into severity and raged out of control below the town. Smoke bellowed out of the ground, sometimes creating a thick fog engulfing the town and causing ash to fall from the sky. Realizing the fires could not be controlled, residents began to leave in droves, until eventually only 10 residents resided there. To this day, the majority of Centralia is abandoned, and the fires are still burning underneath. Visitors have documented the vents in which smoke still seeps out into the open air. As stated above, Centralia was one of the inspirations for the titular location of Silent Hill, with similar origins to the town's thick fog and tragic downturn. Unsurprisingly, the area is nicknamed Hell, and has been used as a model for the depiction of a town in hell by writers such as Dean Koontz. Today, the fires are still burning in Centralia, and it is unknown when or if they'll ever be extinguished. Number 11, the Albanian bunkers. Albania is a unique country in the Balkans of Europe. It was a socialist republic from 1946 until 1991 during the collapse of communism. Albania remained isolationist and was not allied with the Soviet Union, leaving it virtually on its own for much of the 20th century. Albania was ruled by the eccentric Enver Hoxha for 39 years, and the country's isolation led to Hoxha developing paranoia of either Western or Soviet aggression. In 1967, Hoxha ordered the construction of bunkers across the Albanian countryside, with an average 5.7 bunkers per square kilometer. The plan was to have enough bunkers to sword the civilian population and military personnel to both ward off invaders and to keep the civilians safe, similar to the vaults in the Fallout series. However, the construction of the bunkers caused a great strain on Albania's resources, leading to a financial crisis and rise in poverty. After the death of Hoxha in 1985 and the collapse of communism in 1991, the bunkers were abandoned and never used for their intended purposes. Now there are thousands of bunkers scattered across Albania, in fields and mountain faces, and even in the middle of urban centers. Many have now been repurposed as storage facilities and even hostels. However, there are still many unused, waiting to be explored. Those brave enough to explore will no doubt find the remains of Hoxha's strange motivations, and possibly the ghosts of history's past. Number 10, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. While urban explorers usually settle for a large building to check out, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone is heaven for one, though it resembles hell. In 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear reactor went into meltdown, expelling radioactive dust and fumes into the atmosphere. Since then, a 2,600 square kilometer area is completely deserted and off limits. 3 cities once thrived in the area: Chernobyl, Pripyat, and Pulaski, but now are left to rest as the air is too toxic to live for long periods of time. Despite the dangerous atmosphere, tourists still sign up for one of the many tours offered for those brave enough to enter. Those who go are required to carry Geiger counters and are told to remain in view of the guides, not to wander off alone or into certain areas. The Red Forest is now the most radioactive place on Earth, and people are told they will only last a few minutes before succumbing to radiation poisoning. The ground has insulated the radiation, meaning people's footwears become radioactive and need to be disposed of. More surprisingly, the area is home to a wide amount of wildlife who have become deformed by the radiation over the years. This has attracted hunters who wish to hunt wild boars, bears, and wolves who live in the concrete jungle, untouched by society. For those brave enough to venture into the exclusion zone, they will find a scene resembling that of Metro 2033, but much more real and much more deadly. Number 9, Plymouth Montserrat. The modern Pompeii, Plymouth was once the capital of Montserrat, a British overseas territory in the Caribbean. Before 1995, the settlement had around 4,000 residents living near the Soufriere Hills volcano, which was thought to be inactive. However, in July 1995, the volcano erupted in the first of a series of eruptions to follow. The settlement began to be engulfed in ash clouds, making the air dangerous to breathe. Between August 4th and 8th, 1997, the most violent of the eruptions occurred and buried 80% of the town in ash and other rock. Luckily, Plymouth was evacuated in advance, resulting in no fatalities. Sadly, this also left the future of the town unknown, and now half of Montserrat is designated an exclusion zone. To this day, Plymouth remains empty, except for the occasional science and government expedition to record the atmosphere for toxins. Despite having no population, Plymouth is still officially the capital of Montserrat, making it the only ghost town to be a territorial capital on Earth. However, the British government has since funded the construction of a new capital on the north end of the island, as far away from the volcanic range as possible, to prevent another tragedy. Plymouth is still buried in a grave of ash, with the ash piles rising high over homes and several stories of multi-floor buildings. Virtually no life exists there, as all the animals either fled or were killed in the eruptions and the plant life dying out. Thankfully, the eruptions did not result in the second Pompeii incident, as only 19 people died during the eruptions, and the government was able to get all of the residents out safely. It is unknown if residents will ever return to Plymouth, or if it will become an area for future archaeologists to discover. Number 8. City Hall Subway Station, New York City. Located under southern Manhattan, City Hall Station was opened in 1904 as a Romanesque style architecture, featuring a mezzanine, large skylights with colored glass, and even brass chandeliers. The station was used for 41 years, but during the 40s, the New York subways began using more cars to accommodate the growing number of commuters. City Hall Station had a wide curve, making it impractical to have the larger trains come through, so it was decided the station would shut down, and it officially closed on New Year's Eve 1945. Since then, it has remained virtually untouched, with no plans for redevelopment. There was a brief time in the 90s when tours were conducted by the Transit Museum, but this was stopped due to security risks. People have ventured into the abandoned station, only to see a beautiful array of colors from the still intact skylights, allowing people to experience the station as it more or less resembled during the operation. There are continued efforts to have the station expand admission to the public, but so far only registered members of the Transit Museum, with reservations and payments in advance, are allowed tours of the old station. Urban explorers do make their way down there though, in order to see one of New York City's hidden gems. Number 7. Poveglia Island, Venice. Literally built in a dark time, Poveglia Island in Venice has had a series of malicious uses during its history. Its use dates back to the 12th century, and there is evidence to suggest it was used as a dumping ground for those affected by the bubonic plague, or Black Death. People would be transported to the island for quarantine, where they would be left to die and buried in many pits. In more recent history, Poveglia was used as a mental asylum, and once again to quarantine. This time, those suffering from the Spanish flu. Official estimates say there have been over 100,000 deaths on the island alone. The hospital was closed in 1968, and despite attempts to use the ground for agriculture, the island was abandoned and has been ever since. The buildings remain standing, but derelict. Urban explorers travel to Poveglia to search through the island frozen in time, but many who have been there have claimed the ghosts of the past inhabitants still haunt Poveglia, and not all of them are friendly. The island is claimed to be notoriously haunted by poltergeists and demons, which have been known to attack and possess unwanted visitors. As of 2014, the Italian government has put the island up for auction, in the hopes the buyer will develop a luxurious hotel and resort. However, it is unlikely the spirits of the dead will welcome guests with open arms. Number 6. Alberta's derelict farmhouses. Alberta is known for the Rocky Mountains, Canada's oil capital, and the Calgary Stampede every July. The province is known as the Gateway to the West, since it is the last province before entering British Columbia, Canada's only Pacific province. Aside from oil, Alberta has a long history in the agriculture business and is quite famous for its beef industry. Scattered across the prairies are farms, old and new, some encompassing vast sections of land. With the beginning of the oil and gas boom, agriculture went down, but still remains a major industry in the province. However, many either turn their attention to oil extraction and simply abandon their homes. Farms across Alberta now lay abandoned and falling apart, making them ideal for
That
urban
would be eerie,
explorers
just a
and
bunch
teens
of random
conducting scare
barns
dares.
falling
Ghost
apart.
Stories of Alberta details the story of the houses around Camrose, with one steed found completely abandoned, but with the furniture still there, food in the fridge, and beds neatly made. It appeared as if the family simply up and left with no explanation, and they were never seen or heard from again. Apparently, the home was lost to history and is likely to still be standing somewhere, but the only way to tell is if someone happened to stumble across an abandoned house with the furniture still there and the beds made, albeit now weathered down by nature. It is likely the ages and new developments will soon turn these homes to dust, so for those who wish to explore these relics should do so now. Take heed though, or you might find yourself face to face with the previous owners. Number 5, Port Arthur, Australia. Situated near the southern tip of Tasmania, Port Arthur used to be a penal colony during Australia's time as a British territory. It was notorious for having some of the strictest rules out of all of the other penal colonies in the British Empire. After its closure in 1877, it was put up for auction, but the structures were already in quick decay, and plans of turning it into a tourist attraction seemed dim. It wasn't until 1979 when the funding was finally received to preserve the remaining structures, and the site was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. However, the former prison's dark history was far from over. In 1996, a gunman murdered 35 people and injured a further 23 in Australia's worst massacre. According to authorities, his motives were solely to kill as many people as possible. As a result, he is not allowed to hear any information about his actions, and will therefore remain nameless on this list. With the mixture of prison atmosphere and massacre site, it is now regarded as one of Australia's most haunted locations. People visiting Port Arthur have reported seeing strange anomalies and shadow figures around the grounds, usually accompanied by strange noises. Despite this, it receives around 250,000 visitors annually, encouraging the government to further its efforts to preserve the site due to its popularity and historical significance. Number 4, Garnet Ghost Town, Montana. A town straight out of a Silver Age Western, Garnet, Montana was once a thriving mining town located 32 kilometers west of Missoula. The town began when gold was discovered in the area, and people flocked to settle there in hopes of finding their fortune. Garnet became popular for its saloons, of which there were 13 in total during its peak. Disaster struck in 1912 when a fire consumed half the town. Most of the commercial buildings were destroyed as a result, and many residents simply packed up and moved on. The town was completely abandoned by 1940, despite a brief revival in 1934 when the price of gold rose from $16 per ounce to $32 per ounce. Garnet is now one of the best preserved ghost towns in the United States, and attracts over 16,000 visitors per year, and the third Saturday of every year is celebrated as Garnet Day. The atmosphere of the town gives emphasis to Ghost Town, since its location is rather remote near the Rocky Mountains. Due to its popularity, the Montana government is making efforts to upkeep Garnet for as long as possible. But nature is taking its toll on the old wood homes. For those who are looking for a real Western experience with authenticity, Garnet is the place for you. Number 3, Varosha, Cyprus. We've all heard of ghost towns, but imagine an entire ghost city. Varosha was once the resort area of Famagusta, Cyprus, attracting such stars as Elizabeth Taylor and Brigitte Bardot. In 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus in order to protect the rights of the Turkish Cypriots and undermine the military junta on the island in Greece. In 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus in order to protect the rights of Turkish Cypriots and undermine the military junta on the island and in Greece. Turkey managed to secure the northern part of Cyprus, effectively splitting the nation in half. In order to maintain peace, the UN established a demilitarized line between the occupied territory and Cyprus. Eventually, the occupied territory declared independence as the Turkish Republic of Cyprus, but it is still internationally considered occupied territory. Varosha found itself smack in the middle of the zone, and its fierce fighting led to the area going from 39,000 residents to completely abandoned. Today, the entire community is completely fenced off with barbed wire, but people still venture in despite the risk of becoming arrested by Northern Cyprus authorities. Varosha still looks rather livable, but has remained abandoned since the 1974 invasion, meaning the buildings are beginning to decay. The community still resembles a war zone, with buildings showing decay, and no humans and scarce wildlife in the area. Those who wish to visit Varosha are warned due to the unstable condition of the high rises and the risk of arrest by Northern Cypriot authorities. This has not dissuaded explorers from risking the trip to visit Cyprus's Paradise Lost. Number 2, Hashima Island, Japan. Located off the southern coast of Japan, Hashima Island looks more like a concrete battleship than an actual island, which is why it's sometimes known as Gunkanjima, or Battleship Island. Hashima began seeing human inhabitants after coal was discovered there in 1810 and saw a permanent population between 1887 and 1974. 15.7 million tons of coal was mined during that time. The buildings are mostly a series of apartment complexes to accommodate the miners and their families, but also had a town hall, school, community center, and hospital, along with places of entertainment and leisure. Hashima has a dark history though, with prisoners of war being transferred there and forced to mine to feed the Japanese war machine. Coal production began to decline after oil and gas replaced it as an energy source, leading to many coal mines ceasing operation nationwide. The island now sits abandoned, with the buildings still standing, but worn down and colorless. Until 2009, the island remained inaccessible, but was opened up to tours, making it a surprisingly popular destination. The eerie atmosphere, accompanied with the new overgrowth, certainly matches the tragic history during its Second World War stint, but it is quickly becoming a hot destination, and was even used for scenes in the James Bond film Skyfall. Bonus, Catacombs of Paris, France. This tunnel network under France's capital dates back to the late 18th century. It was built due to Paris's overflowing cemeteries, and inside are the remains of over 6 million people. While many of these tunnels are abandoned, tours are offered for certain parts of the catacombs. Crazy. The way you choose to explore the catacombs could seal your fate, as many people have died in the tunnels after becoming lost. Number 1, Oradour, France. A tragic relic of the Second World War, Oradour-sur-Glane was a village in Auvergne, France. After the fall of France in 1940, the village was under German occupation. Until June 10, 1944, most of the Germans stationed there were moved to Normandy to repel the invading Allied forces. The regiment remaining in the area was the 4th SS Panzer Regiment. In the early hours, members of the puppet Vichy government reported a German officer was captured by Free French forces, so the 4th moved into Oradour, surrounded the village and gathered the residents into the town center. While initially stating it was a routine identity check, the SS soldiers quickly escalated the situation. First, the men were led to a barn where machine guns cut them down. Then, 247 women and 205 children were locked in the church. Then, the SS detonated an incendiary device. In total, 642 people were killed and the village was reduced to rubble. Those who managed to flee before the massacre returned the following day, only to find their homes destroyed and friends dead. After Germany's defeat the following year, French President Charles de Gaulle declared Oradour would remain as is, as a reminder of the horrific atrocities the Nazis inflicted on those they occupied. Since then, the village has been rebuilt, but the ruins are still to act as a memorial for those who died in the massacre. Even the church where the women and children were murdered is still standing, hauntingly towering over the village. It has been christened the Martyred Village and is open to the public, offering both tours and allowing visitors to wander on their own. Knowing the amount of suffering to have occurred those 70 years ago, even the silence and ambient noises heard in the ruins today can still give people the chills. Before you go, I wanted to tell you about the giveaway I'm hosting, but for
Well, alright guys, that was top 15 horrifying abandoned places to explore. I know that was a longer video, so thanks for sticking with me, and damn, it's getting, it's about 2:30 a.m. and fuck. That video was a little longer than I thought. I thought I'd go by fast, and shit, I feel tired now. Sorry if I spaced out there for a minute or two. I'm fucking ready for bed. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure and smack the like button and subscribe if you're new. But until next time guys, peace.